Hey guys, so this is lesson 2, part 1. Don't mind the hijab. I kind of got lazy, so I just grabbed one of the blankets from my bed. Yeah. Anyways, so let's begin. Just got a message. Okay. Okay, let's begin. I'm on page 15, Science in Context. The testing of ideas in the heart of science and engineering. In their quest for understanding, scientists engage in many different activities. They ask questions, write this down, make observations, seek evidence, share ideas, and analyze data. These activities are all part of the dynamic process of science. The process of science typically consists of the components shown in figure 104. You can look at this on your Savas website. Notice that the parts of I'm just going to skip this part because you could just look at it on Savas. Exploration and discovery. Usually the testing of ideas begin with observations and questions. Those observations and questions come from a variety of different resources, as shown in figure 105. Again, you can look at this from your Savas. Scientific attitude. Good scientists share scientific attitudes or habits of mind that lead them to exploration and discovery. Curiosity, skepticism, open-mindedness, and creativity help scientists and engineers ask new questions and define new problems. Curiosity. A scientist may look at a salt marsh and ask, "What's that plant? Why is it growing here?" Previous studies can spark curiosities and lead to new questions. Engineering problems often arise from practical issues involving humans and health or environmental issues. So, I recommend you write this down. One of the key components of scientific attitude is curiosity. Skepticism. Scientists and engineers should be skeptics who question existing ideas and hypotheses. If you don't know what skepticism means, I recommend you search it up and write the meaning down. And hypotheses. And refuse to accept explanations without evidence. Scientists often design new experiments to test hypotheses proposed by other scientists. Engineers work to solve problems in the physical world by using scientific thinking. Open-mindedness. Scientists and engineers should be open-minded, meaning that they are not willing to accept different ideas that may not agree. They are willing to accept different ideas that may not agree with their hypotheses. Creativity and critical thinking are essential for asking questions, defining problems, proposing hypotheses, and designing experiments that yield accurate data. So, some attitudes that a scientist needs to have is curiosity. I recommend you write this down. Skepticism, open-mindedness, and creativity. I am currently getting 10,000 messages from the science group chat. Okay, practical problems. Ideas for scientific investigation often arise from practical problems involving humans and health or environmental issues. Salt marshes, for example, are vital nurseries for commercially important fish and shellfish. Yet salt marshes are under intense wonder. How would nearby construction affect the marsh, and how can that impact be minimized? So basically, what we've learned so far is scientists should be curious, a skeptic, be open-minded, and be creative. Scientists always ask new questions, and so that could lead them to exploration and discovery. New technology. New technology often opens new ways of asking questions for both scientists and engineers. For example, portable remote data collecting equipment enables field researchers to monitor environmental conditions around the clock in several different locations at once. This information allows researchers to pose and test new hypotheses. So what is also important for scientists, new technology is very important. We know this already. Okay, community analysis and feedback. Scientists often collaborate in groups and communicate with other research groups in order for research to be accepted. However, it must be officially, I recommend you write this down, it must be officially shared with with the scientific community. The communication must follow a variety of rules that ensure it is scientifically appropriate. I recommend you write this stuff down. Some of the steps that scientists use when communicating their results are shown in Figure 106. Replication, publication, discussion with colleagues, feedback and peer review, coming up with new questions, ideas, theory building. Scientists also share their work with the general public, especially when results or information could benefit society. This communication is less formal and can take the form of newspaper or magazine article, television program, or blog post. So I did post the notes for this lesson over here, but I am still going to read these notes. So, the process of science contains, and I added this picture right here. I don't know if you can read that, but you can find it on Savas. It should be on your Savas book. Curiosity, open-mindedness, and skepticism are important traits of a scientist, and creativity is important too. Scientific questions often arise from practical problems, like health or the environment. This is the second lesson, Unit 1. Science does not operate in isolation. Social and ethical concerns influence this. I recommend you write all this stuff down that I'm saying right now in your notes because these are my notes. And I recommend you write down, and I recommend you write a few extra things that might help you. Scientists share data, peer review is important. Scientists share data, peer review is important. Peer review checks for many things like bias or errors. Doesn't mean it this can make the source more trustable. We must understand society's limitations and science ethics and morals. Scientists must try to avoid bias. Science and engineering are intertwined. Data, and then analysis and interpret, and then see if hypothesis is correct, and then explanation. Must refute arguments with data. A scientist must refute arguments with data. They can't just pull it out of the thin air. They gotta refute it with data. Okay, let's start reading again. Peer review. Scientists share findings with other scientists by publishing their hypotheses, experimental methods, results, and analysis in scientific journals. Papers submitted to these journals are reviewed by anonymous independent reviewers who work in the same field. Reviewers look carefully for mistake, oversight, unfair influences like bias, or fraud in technique and analysis. I recommend you write some stuff down from this paragraph. I recommend you write at least 1 or 2 things from every single paragraph because you're going to need it. Okay. Their goal is to ensure that articles meet the highest standards of quality. This process is called peer review, like we do in English class. Publishing articles in peer-reviewed scientific journals allows researchers to share ideas. It also allows other scientists to evaluate and test the data and analysis. Peer review does not guarantee that a piece of work is correct. Write this down. But it does certify that the work meets standards set by the scientific community. I recommend you write that down because that is important. Sharing knowledge and new ideas. It also, when peer review happens between scientists, it makes the work more reliable because other scientists approve that work, okay? Sharing knowledge and new ideas. After research has been published, it enters the dynamic marketplace of scientific ideas. How do new data fit into existing scientific understanding? For example, the finding that growth of salt marsh grasses is limited by available nitrogen sparks more questions. Is the growth of other plants in the same habitat also limited by nitrogen? What about the growth of different plants in similar environments, such as mangrove swamp shown in Figure 107? Again, you can look at this from your Savas account. What about these logical and important questions lead to new hypotheses that must be independently supported or rejected by controlled experiments. This is going to be part 1. This is 10 minutes long, so I'm going to split it up and see you in part 2.